think we're getting more questions between the two of you than our panel.
No authority whatsoever. This is a very important point. I'm sorry.
This is a very important point. No, Mr Morrison, Mr Albanese, that's enough. We do need to move on.
Depends upon Commonwealth funding.
Here,
you could not have had any influence.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And that was Nine's great debate turning into a great big shouting match as 60 Minutes host Sarah Arbo tried and failed to get the leaders to be quiet. But it's no surprise that shouting was the winner on the night, because if you tune into the daily campaign press conference, you can see the media setting the tone.
Just been handed your policy document, Mr Albanese. You don't know. That's not right.
That showdown last Thursday was the latest hard quiz moment on the campaign trail, with Nine's political reporter Jonathan Kersley catching the Labor leader out with this gotcha in the middle of a press conference on clean energy.
Your speech later on today, you'll talk about the legacy of Labor leaders. One of those legacies is the NDIS. Yesterday, you talked about Labor's 6-point plan. What are the 6 points?
It should have been a simple question, given that Labor launched the NDIS policy 2 weeks earlier. But it was one Albo could not answer.
Mr Albanese, you are putting forward saying you are across your brief.
We will
what
put
are
people,
the 6 points of your policy?
Put people at the centre of the NDIS.
Lost on the details, and with his team desperate to keep him off the front pages, Albo ducked briefly aside and then came back to try again.
After a few uncomfortable moments of shuffling, begins rattling them off.
So, just confirm, you've just been handed...
Is to defend and fix the NDIS.
Yes, Albanese was given a cheat sheet and was then caught in the act. But if he came out looking bad, then so did the press pack, who by now were screaming blue murder.
Albanese, you don't know the policy.
Do you not know what it is?
Albanese and his climate spokesman Chris Bowen were there to talk about clean energy. But since the Labor leader famously failed to nail the unemployment rate on day one of the campaign, the TV hounds have been on a gotcha hunt. And almost every day now involves a memory test. And because the Prime Minister excels at the game, Albanese has become the one making headlines like this Telegraph front page.
Albo's 6-point disaster.
Not a
damn
idea.
Sorry.
Naturally, his latest stumble also led the TV evening news on 9, 7 and the ABC.
Despite insisting he's across the detail, Anthony Albanese's campaign was today rocked by a fresh blunder.
Struggling to detail his plan for the NDIS.
The Labor leader was unable to name the 6 key points of his plan for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
In 10's bulletin, however, Albo's fresh blunder was nowhere to be seen, with political editor Peter Van Onselen choosing to ignore it, as he explained on Twitter.
I have no criticism of others forming a different view, but I didn't think it was a big deal.
Other journalists, past and present, shared his view, but did criticise the questioners for their rudeness and intent, with the ABC's Michael Slezak tweeting,
I don't think this is making our profession look very good.
And the Monthly's Rachel Withers writing,
Journalists have convinced themselves that they are doing a public service in openly bullying a prime ministerial candidate.
While former Nine columnist turned Labor Twitter warrior Mike Carlton took aim at the editors who give reporters their writing instructions.
I want you to ask Albanese the date of the Peasants' Revolt. It was 1381. That'll him, and we'll splash it on page 1.
But there was also defence of the reporters' fearless questioning, not least from one of Kersley's admiring colleagues at Nine, who called it journalism at its best. And the Australian Sid Marr was also a fan, asking readers,
since when did asking the leader of a major party a basic question about one of their chief policies become a gotcha moment?
But Basil Zemplis, who sits on both sides of the fence these days as Seven Star and Perth Mayor, was unimpressed, both with the Labor leader.
Should he have known the 6 points of the NDIS? Yes. Should he have had a go at reeling them off? Yes.
But also with the media's blunder hunters.
This idea that everybody has to recall every single thing about everything they've ever said or ever stood for, I think, quite frankly, is over the top. We have notes in television. They sit in front of us. We often refer to them when we've gone blank. Yeah. What's the difference? Why shouldn't they be able to do that? And frankly, I think this is over the top.
So, why is it happening? Well, politics is a blood sport, and the media can smell blood with Albo, who's seen as no match for Morrison at handling reporters. But the daily grind of a long campaign can also leave journalists struggling for stories, and the gotcha is an easy way to get them. And it's been made easier by the ABC's and Sky's decision in 2019 to put journalist questions on camera, which, as Sam Maiden observed last week, allows TV reporters to play the star.
I'm not sure if that's great. I think that you'd almost better just... Maybe it's great theatre, but like I think that it's led to a different dynamic in those press conferences where there's kind of a second character in the room.
Morrison is adept at deflecting or talking his way out of an ambush, and Greens leader Adam Bant showed how to knock reporters on the head when he was asked to name Australia's wage price index.
What's the current WPI?
Well, Google it, mate. I mean...
But swatting journalists and playing mastermind are not the Labor leader's greatest talents. So journalists keep testing him. Does it make him look bad? Yes. Does it swing votes? The latest polls suggest it does not. But the question for us is it good journalism? And in my view, the answer is no. It's cheap and nasty, and it's done with one intent: to catch the leader out. It's no wonder so many of the public hate the media. And it's no wonder that they hate politics too, because within hours the Libs had packaged it up into a new attack ad, complete with the tagline, "It won't be easy under Albanese."
What are the 6 points?
The 6 points are what we will do in terms of was outlined by Bill Shorten.
Is this a sign that you don't know what one of your policies is?
Right.
It won't be easy under Albanese.
But the Libs, of course, are not the only ones using attack ads to play the man. In the middle of last night's great debate, Labor slipped this assault on the PM's character into the Sydney and Adelaide ad break.
Going to Hawaii when half of Australia was burning was a mistake.
I don't hold a hose, mate.
Next time something goes wrong, do you trust him to make it right?
That's not my job. That's not my job. It's not my job to do that.
That's been running for weeks now, and a shorter version of that theme on social media has been mocking the PM's attempts to connect with victims.
Worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races.
Meanwhile, the Liberals' attacks on Albo focused on the claim that voters don't know him and he's never run the country.
He's never held a financial portfolio, never held a national security portfolio, he's never delivered a budget. No one knows what he stands for. Don't risk our recovery with Labor.
Labor's attacks, on the other hand, use Morrison's Liberal colleagues to raise the question of whether he can be trusted at all and whether he's fit to be Prime Minister.
An autocrat, a bully who has no moral compass.
A complete psycho.
He is a hypocrite and a liar.
She described you as, quote, a horrible, horrible person.
Scott has always had a reputation for telling lies.
It's who I am.
Ads like these, which go far and wide on social media, are cheap and effective, costing under $500 for that last ad, which was seen more than 80,000 times. That's an awful lot of bang for your buck if you have 13 million or 14 million to spend, as Liberal and Labor did in 2019. So it's no surprise that the ANU's Dr Andrew Hughes, a specialist in political advertising, tells Media Watch that the money is moving that way.
Labor are going very high on ad number and increasingly spend on digital platforms. These ads are tending to become increasingly negative as the campaign goes on. The Coalition are running a more focused campaign, with a smaller number of ads being run on the digital platforms, but have been largely negative since the campaign started.
Both major parties are still spending more than 3/4 of their money on TV. But digital ads arguably bring better value because you can target the people you need to reach.
I mean, things are tough. And they've been really tough. There's drought, there's floods, there's fire, there's pandemic. There is now war.
That Liberal defence of Scott Morrison's performance was served up by Google to voters in selected seats, telling them
40,000 people are alive in Australia today because of the way we managed the pandemic. 700,000 people still have jobs and countless numbers of businesses that would have been destroyed.
And those who saw it were probably in need of persuasion. As you can see from this map produced by The Guardian, they were mainly in bushfire and flood-hit communities on the east coast of Australia. Facebook ads tend to be even more focused on key marginal seats. Research by the University of Queensland shows Liberal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg spending nearly $87,000 in an effort to hold on to his seat of Kooyong against Independent Dr Monique Ryan, who has spent around $61,000. While Sydney's Wentworth and the other Teal Challenge seats are also seeing big money outlaid. And the words used by the various ads are revealing. The Independents talk mainly about climate and climate change. Labour's top terms are lies, Medicare, Scott Morrison and jobs. And the Libs talk most about economy, jobs and lies. So, do the ads swing any votes? According to former Gillard advisor Sean Kelly, one sort certainly does.
A good 3/4 of the ads run by either side are going to end up negative, and that is because they work. And they work because we're hardwired in our brains to fear loss. You know, we might be a little bit interested in the potential gains that a politician might be promising us, but we are definitely terrified of the things that they might take away from us.
And, says Kelly, scare campaigns can work because deep down we believe them.
When Bill Shorten says that the Liberals were going to cut Medicare back in 2016, he is playing on a belief that the Liberals will always cut healthcare. When Scott Morrison in 2019 was saying that Labor will bring in death taxes, that was just as deceptive, but it was based on a belief that people already have about the Labor Party that they want to raise taxes.
So, what scare campaigns are out there this time? Medicare is again a Labor target, as you can see from this Facebook ad running in the contested seat of Bennelong.
ScoMo's new health minister
says we will see more cuts to
Medicare
over the next 3 years. Hurting Medicare hurts Australians.
Meanwhile, the Libs are again raising fears of a carbon tax, in this video targeting regional Queensland.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
There will be no carbon tax ever.
That ad cost under $2,000 and was viewed more than 300,000 times. So, are the claims in those ads all accurate? Clearly not. But there's nothing anyone could do about that, because Australia has no federal law to enforce truth in political advertising, and neither major party has plans to introduce one. So, stand by for more dodgy, negative ads and more repackaged gotchas as the campaign goes down to the wire. But now, let's leave politics and go to the horse handler turned COVID swindler. 7 News in Melbourne took up the story.
An aspiring Olympian has admitted to stealing money from a COVID fund set up to help save struggling Melbourne businesses. Jackson Stern created fake documents to fleece $180,000 from Victorian taxpayers.
Seven's exclusive on the COVID conman came with plenty of footage of Jackson Stern taken from social media.
Jackson Stern has admitted to taking Victorian taxpayers for a ride.
Showing him handling, riding and training horses, and with his pet dog. But let's just pause a moment and look at those pictures side by side. Are they really the same person? Clearly not. This man with the horse is not Jackson Stern at all. He's Alistair McLean, and he's not a fraud, but a successful horse coach and trainer. And this one is the con man, Jackson Stern, whom we also saw in the studio intro. And as you can see, Jackson and Alistair look totally different. So, how on earth did Seven fail to notice when it used these pictures only seconds apart? Didn't anybody check? Not surprisingly, Alistair and his family were not happy, especially when the error was repeated nationally that night on Seven's programme, The Latest.
An athlete's put his Olympic dreams in jeopardy, admitting to fleecing a COVID support fund.
And that was after McLean had contacted the network to complain. Sadly, this is not the first time that Seven has screwed up. Late last year, he had to apologise to this man for wrongly identifying him as the driver who hit and killed a 17-year-old boy in Casula. 2 months later, they apologised to this man for wrongly identifying him as the person who abducted Cleo Smith. And on Thursday, they had to apologise again to Mr McLean.
We mistakenly included images of Alistair McLean of McLean Sport Horses. Mr McLean and his business are not connected in any way with Jackson Stern or the criminal charges against him. We apologise for our error in including those images.
It really is time that Seven got its act together and made sure who it was putting up on screen, especially when it's accusing them of serious crime. And finally tonight, it's up and away on the long haul of a lifetime.
It's the holy grail of aviation, flying from the east coast of Australia direct to London and New York.
Qantas has pressed the go button on non-stop flights from Sydney.
Qantas is soaring to new heights, on track to launch the world's longest non-stop commercial flight.
Last Monday, the media descended on Sydney Airport to cover what breakfast bulletins promised was a major announcement.
It's an historic day for Australia's aviation industry, in a move that would shake up air travel for Australians.
Yep, it was big news to wake up to if you've been living under a rock.
This is something Qantas has been talking about for some time.
5 years to be precise, and the media has had a first-class ticket for the never-ending journey. So, what did Qantas actually do last week?
The Airbus A350-1000. Qantas today ordered a dozen of them.
Yes, Qantas bought some planes, which are yet to be built. But there was this prototype to distribute to hungry TV crews, along with stylish animation of what the inside might look like. Promises, promises, which is what the media's repeated since April 2017, when the airline first vowed
non-stop Sydney to London flights could happen by 2022, says Qantas.
a global pandemic put paid to that deadline, but the media never lost interest, riding high with each new announcement. In 2018, Airbus's long-haul contender taxied into another media moment. And then in 2019...
Australia's access to the world took a giant leap forward today. Qantas will trial non-stop flights to New York and London.
Yes, a giant leap to a trial, on which journalists like David Koch happily played guinea pig on a non-stop hop from New York to Sydney.
The Qantas Dreamliner crew is ready to set a new aviation record, and so am I.
And a month after that, a ride-along from London.
We joined the flight at Heathrow as guests of the airline.
Both flights enjoying wall-to-wall coverage on takeoff and landing. So, with the planes finally on order, when can you hop aboard? Next year? The year after?
When these ultra-long-haul flights eventually begin at the end of 2025...
Really? Another 3 years of waiting? And no doubt another 3 years of eager media updates, which thankfully for Qantas tends to drown out all that other noise you might call actual news.
Qantas has lost its appeal against a federal court ruling that found the outsourcing of 2,000 ground jobs was illegal.
There is a lot of lost luggage. A number of Qantas flights departed with passengers only and no baggage.
If only those stories got the same treatment as ordering new planes. And that's all from us for tonight. There's more on our website where you can stream or download the programme and find a statement from Dr Andrew Hughes, plus links to the University of Queensland's ad spending dashboard. And don't forget Media Bites every Thursday. But for now, until next week, goodbye.